Hello, everybody. Welcome to Let's Chat on Sunday. And today we have our friend that we've talked to several times before. I just love talking to John Davis from John of New. Welcome, John.
Well, thank you, Kim. I love being here. And as I was saying before we got on, if it wasn't for you, I wouldn't be here anyway. So it's okay.
Oh, well, I love your channel and I love what you're doing. And if anybody has not seen John of New, please go check it out. And he has so many interesting topics. And I like how you do like kind of bite-sized little videos. They're really palatable, and I really like the format that you've chosen and the way that you've done it.
Well, thank you. I think that it's better to get in with a simple message and get out so people can ponder it through the day.
I love it. I love it. Today, I wanted to, I've been wanting to do this show for a while, but I really wanted to do a whole show about Jesus. And I couldn't think of a better person to talk to about Jesus. And so I wanted to, I wonder if you could just kind of begin by letting people know your own personal connection to Jesus and how that came about. And then I have a bunch of questions for you. So yeah, go ahead.
Okay, great. So I was raised Catholic. My mom had her master's degree in liturgy, had a liturgical doctorate at our Catholic church. I was an altar boy. I did all that stuff. At 18, my mom said, go find what you believe. Spirituality is a personal journey. And I went out and started studying everything I could possibly get my hands on. And I had settled into being an agnostic. And then I was at a party in Canada, and out of the blue, a psychic walks up to me and says, "They're telling me you walked with Jesus." And at that point, I wasn't really sure about reincarnation myself. But out of my mouth blurts the words, "Yes, I did," which blew my mind. I just knew I had for some reason. I went away from there. I was like, no, I don't want to be the guy who thinks he's Napoleon. Right? So I don't want to be that guy. I don't want to be that guy. Yeah, right. So I went from there to the Maryland Renaissance Festival where I was performing, and I was talking to a friend of mine who I'd known for years. We were just, "How you been? What's been going on?" Well, out of the blue, she suddenly says, "You were John the Beloved in a past life, right?" And I was like, here's the second one. To make a long story short, I had 19 different people tell me independently and without me going to them about this past life. Finally, it came down to this moment where I was like, you know what? I don't want another person telling me, if God, source, universe, consciousness, yada, yada, whatever you want to call it, you want me to know this, send me a direct sign, period. And about an hour later, a buddy of mine comes in and he hands me the book by Jess Stern called Edgar Cayce on the Millennium. And I'm reading this book. What did Edgar Cayce say was going to happen in the millennium? And I'm reading. I get to page 32, and the book says, "John the Beloved will again be named John." And I'm like, well, crap. Right. So I took that as my sign to go find a way to have my direct personal experience. So I found a doctor of hypnotherapy who does past life regressions. And there's a difference between a hypnotist who does that and a doctor of hypnotherapy. There's two different modalities there. So I found a doctor of hypnotherapy, and we set up an appointment. I went and I had I sat with her for a session. She guided me through a meditation and sent me home for a week to train with her voice. So I had a week of training with her voice was in my head when we did the regression.
Oh, wow.
Went back for the regression, and she regressed me, and I was in like that really fast. And I opened my eye and I looked down, and my legs were bare. And I was like, oh, good. Can't be an apostle. They always wear robes.
Right.
Then I found out what I was wearing was called a fisher's coat. It was a leg, bare legs, bare arms. If you went in the boat and you fell overboard with robes on, you'd be sucked under. You would drown. So this was actually the Galilean one-piece bathing suit, basically. And so here I am. I'm looking down. I'm also holding ropes and nets, and I'm actually repairing, tying, filling in holes. Like I was like doing labor some work. My hands were rough and raw. And I looked to my right, and there was an old man standing beside me. long gray beard, holding a staff. But the staff he was holding was literally just specifically to hold him up, because I literally said he doesn't do the work anymore because he can't do it. His back is bad, and so now I do the work. And I turn, and he starts saying something to me, and I can't understand him because he's speaking in a different language. And the regressionist says, imagine if you had a megaphone held to your ear that could help you understand. And I suddenly started hearing this conversation about how are we going to get these fish up to where we're going to sell them, because whatever means of conveyance we had was down. We couldn't use it. So we're trying to figure out how we're going to get all these fish up to where we're going to sell it. So this is like a general conversation. So the regressionist says, is there anything else important here? She says, I said, no. She said, let's go to the next most important moment. And the next most important moment was, I turned to my left and people are running down the beach, like really fast running. And I'm like, people are running, and you could hear me get a little anxious. She says, where are they going? And I look to my left and there's a crowd formed down the beach. And a big crowd. And I'm like, there's a crowd. And she says, what do you do? I said, well, I'm going to go. And so I go to this crowd. As I get closer and closer to this crowd, I can feel this feeling that it's just out of this world. It's pure love to its fullest degree. And as I get closer and closer to this crowd, you can hear me in the regression. I start to lose my breath. I'm like, and I start saying, oh my God, you can feel him. You can feel him. And I get into the crowd and I see my buddy. I'm going to click up this picture real quick. This is a painting I did 6 months after the regression. And this man stares back at me. But he smiled, and he walks over to me, and he lays his hand on my chest. And when he lays his hand on my chest, John of old, in that past life, had what a lot of people would consider a near-death experience. I got to experience it in my regression. I literally left the physical world and went into this pure state of love in this white expanse. And I was just, in the regression, I moaned for about 10 minutes. And I was just in this just pure bliss. And the regressionist says, what's the next most important moment? And then the next most important moment was feeling all my fears, my anxieties, my stresses. And she says, because if I had never felt my fears and anxieties and stresses, I could never have fully understood or appreciated that pure love. I needed to have that baseline to measure against. She says, what are you seeing? And I was watching Jeshua, who I call Jeshua ben Joseph, walk over this hill away from me. And it was like watching this person. And I say, he showed me everything. And now I've got to be with him. I've got to go with him. And you always wonder why the apostles would have walked away from their life and just left. I totally get it, because he literally gave him a glimpse of what's behind the veil and let him see that pure love. And as I'm watching him walk away, one of the things they do in past life regressions is they try to lead the person to the end of that lifetime. So you experience the fruition of that. She says, the regressionist says, how would you feel about seeing him die? Not realizing that I was watching Jeshua walk over a hill. And the next thing that happened was I was standing at the foot of the cross screaming, like literally wailing and crying. And if you go on my YouTube channel, there's a video called 2 Moments from My Regression. You hear the moment I meet him and go out of body, and you hear the moment I'm at the cross. And it's makes me cry every time I watch it. But this man was just this incredible, loving individual, married, and just beautiful. And that's, ever since then, I've been doing my best to bring his teachings forward, but not put him on a pedestal, if that makes any sense at all.
It does. And are you frozen, John, or am I?
I must be frozen, but you can still hear me?
Okay, I can still hear you. Yeah. You'll be unfrozen at some point, but yeah. But
frozen.
What a fascinating story, John. Well,
at least I froze at a good face.
Yes. You look happy. That is
usually.
Well, and after you had your regression and after you had this experience, how long did it take you to kind of integrate that?
Oh, that is a great question because I I tried to avoid it again because it
Mhm.
was like this is too much. This is too big. This is too giant. And I did my best to really kind of suppress it and put it down. But things kept coming up. I ended up meeting Nick Bunick. There was a book called The Messengers that came out in the late 90s about a man who remembered under regression being the Apostle Paul.
Mhm.
And I ended up getting to know Nick and meeting Nick and doing that. And it just, things sort of grew. So it took me, I mean, it really took me a while to come to a place of saying, yes, this is true.
Right. Right.
And then I started doing meetings where people would want to, because I wanted to tell the story. And I was not very good at it.
Mhm.
In fact, I was pretty bad at it at the time. And I would go and I would just tell the entire story all the way out with all the information. It was just like this ridiculously long speech instead of breaking it down into bite-sized chunks like I do now.
Right. Well, John, why don't you go out and come back in?
Okay.
Because everybody wants your face to move. I don't know why.
I want my face to move too. How do I sign? How do I sign out?
Yeah, just go out and then just hit the link again and you'll come back in.
Okay.
And it's fine. Everything's professional here. And you guys, yes, I made a video for sorry, the big news that happened today. Yeah, so don't worry. That'll be up after this. So just hang in there. Everything's good. There's John back.
I'm back.
Okay.
I'm still frozen
You're
though.
still frozen.
Why am I still frozen?
I don't know. Here, let me
Yeah.
unplug my thing and plug it back in. It's
Yeah,
okay.
I
I
have
can
a
still
I
hear
have a
you. I can still hear
I'm
you fine. Everybody
hardwired,
can hear
so
you. They're just like, they want your face to move.
I don't blame them. I have a good face.
So,
Uh,
John, I mean, at some point, I'm sure your face will move again, but
well, you're not
it's
moving
fine.
now, so
um, so I personally have always felt kind of a kinship with Jesus because I grew up in the Mormon church,
mm,
and for me, um, there was God, there was Jesus, and for me, um, God was intimidating. He was the big guy, and they would he could smite you, and he could
mm,
turn on a dime, judge you, and I didn't feel that way about Jesus. I felt like, and again, it's all this is from a kid's point of view and in the church, um, but with Jesus, I felt like that was the person I could talk to. That's the person I could ask to help me. Um, so it created this real uh, a relationship started when I was in the church with Jesus, and I wanted to talk a little bit about I kind of go through his life. So let's start with the beginning, with the birth of Jesus.
okay.
Um, what is myth, right? What is storytelling? What is myth? What is real? And what is important about the story of the birth of Christ?
Well, the birth of Christ is a fascinating story because the birth of Christ was, and and I'm using Christ now. I would never call him Christ
Right.
because I don't believe he himself. Oh, you're back. You're moving now. Good. um, um, I don't believe that he would have ever wanted to be called Christ
Okay.
or Messiah, because that his whole teaching is about finding his divinity and showing us ours. The story of his birth is fascinating because the story of his birth is a much later addition to the Bible. The Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, are attributed to somewhere between 70 and 200 years after the crucifixion. And they're not written by the original apostles. And the original writings that they found were in Greek, not in Aramaic or Hebrew. So the actual texts themselves come from the Greco-Roman period. And so the actual texts come from this perspective of a Greco-Roman Hellenistic sort of view. Now, the story of Jeshua's birth being of the Virgin Mary is interesting because in Judaic culture, you never found virgin births. Where did you find them? You found them in Greek and Roman
Right.
pagan belief. And, Plato was a virgin birth in Greece. And there's many stories. And even in Egypt, Horus was a virgin birth. So this ideology of a virgin birth is about creating a purity.
Right.
The other thing is a lot of that virgin birth idea comes from the idea of celibacy out of the Pharisaical or Pharisees, what they taught. So you're getting a mishmash of ideologies put together to make him a divine being.
Okay.
And in reality, he himself was a man. You said, greater works than I have done you will do. It is your faith that heals you. If you have faith as small as a mustard seed, you can ask a mountain to move. But what Christianity does is they take the word faith and they make it faith in him as opposed to simply belief. And when it comes back to the idea of it being just simply belief, his teachings open up when you realize he's saying you have all the power.
Right.
So the virgin birth, when you look at it, it is literally them trying to put him on a pedestal. And of course, John of old did not have any view of that, right? And when John of old met Jeshua, Joseph was already dead. He was already gone. So it was literally Mary was the sole parent at the time for Jeshua. So a lot of the stories that you find in the Bible are very much written by people with messianic agendas. Even like a lot of people, like right now there's a big push about the Essene gospel of peace out there. It's interesting because the Essenes, when you actually look at what the Essenes wrote, they were reinterpreting Judaic texts of the Torah, right? Books like the Essene Gospel of Peace and the Gospel of the Holy 12, these were written in the 1920s and the late 1800s by people with various agendas. But they were written at the same time that the Dead Sea Scrolls were found. And so that whole Essene idea was literally an extrapolation. And both of the books that I just referenced, both of them were people who were trying to prove that vegetarianism was the only way to live. And which is fascinating to me,
Yeah.
right? And so they had a vegetarian agenda to try to put on it. But both of those books, like the Gospel of the Holy 12, was actually, there's no text called the Gospel of the Holy 12. It was actually written by a newspaper man as a series of articles in the 1800s. And the Essene Gospel of Peace was written by Edmund Zakelli, and Edmund Zakelli claimed that he found it in the Vatican Library. Nobody else has ever been able to find it. He never produced pictures of it or anything of that nature. The Vatican denies it's even there, right? But Edmund Zakelli, for years, wrote all these things about this Gospel of Peace and how Jesus was a vegetarian.
Oh,
So and right now, that idea is being moved by other people right now too. They're pushing that book as if it's a real text, but there is no real text to hold on to.
that is fascinating. It's fascinating how these kinds of things can change hands and they become something completely different.
Yeah. It's like playing a telephone game over 2,000
Yeah,
years.
exactly.
Yeah.
Now, for the times, Jesus's ideas, what he was selling, was radical. Love one another, love your enemies,
hugely radical.
Right?
Yeah, right. And you know what else is interesting is in that time period there was a huge push for Judaic ritual. Right. There is no reference anywhere of Jeshua ever doing a baptism, not one. No, it's not in the Bible. It's not anywhere. It's only John the Baptist. In fact, what they say in the story of John the Baptist, they say, I'm blessing you with water. He's blessing you with the Holy Spirit, right?
Right.
But the baptisms weren't done, but yet we still do them nowadays, right? And it's so interesting to me how he was walking along, and the greatest version of this to tell is the story of the Samaritan woman at the well. He was not following any Jewish ritual. He was traveling on the Sabbath against Judaic law. He was a Jewish man speaking to a Samaritan who were at odds with each other at the time.
Mm-hmm.
He was a man speaking to a woman alone, which was really bad at the time, right? And then he told her everything she ever did, which is basically he gave her a psychic reading.
Right.
Right? Which Leviticus says is completely wrong, right? So
Yeah.
he did everything opposite of what they were teaching. And when you break down to the things that are supposed to be attributed to him, and I say supposed to because, as I said, it was all word of mouth during the time he was alive. The books are written 70 to 200 years later. So the word of mouth gets handed down. But if you go back and just look at the text, you see all those things I was saying before. Greater works than I have done you will do, and all that. He literally is telling you that you have all the power, and it's right there with you. And I'm so sorry you can't see my face move. I'm telling you, it's doing fantastic things over here.
It is. I'm sure it's amazing. Well, and what can you give a bit of context about what was happening? I mean, I guess you just did a little bit, but a little bit more about what was happening at the time and why his ideas and why his approach was such a threat, such a threat.
Yeah. So if you think about, people often ask me, what was it like to live back then? And the closest thing I can say to you is that imagine living in Afghanistan right now with the Taliban.
Mm.
You have these oppressive religious people who have ideologies that they're telling you that you have to live into. You're under militaristic rule of the Romans, so you have to be good for them as well. And here comes a guy saying, number one, you have all the power. Rome doesn't really have the power. You have all the power, and you don't have to do all these Judaic traditions or practices. He literally was saying you don't need any of them. And so he really was making enemies across the board.
Yeah.
But he was also showing them that all the power was within them. And if you really want to get into the idea of his general life, one of my greatest joys is that the majority of my regressive memories of him are him laughing. And laughing with his wife, and yes, I said wife. In my regression, he literally called her Ishti, which means wife, in Aramaic and in Hebrew. And so he literally called her wife. But just all these times of him just laughing and not having a care in the world about methods, modalities, techniques, or the social structure of the time. But imagine, right now, living in Afghanistan and trying to say that in front of the Taliban. Trying to say anything that would be antithetical to Islam, to the Taliban, then you would be in real serious trouble.
It's and what the risk that he took.
Kim, should I try to change cameras?
Sure, if you want to change cameras.
I'm going to try to jump over to my laptop and see if that changes anything. Here, hold on.
Sure, why not?
Let's try.
Go ahead and look at the chat.
Let's try. Where are you?
The chat is abuzz with today's news because it was.
Today's news is I'm excited about it. Actually,
I think. I think it's going to be good. I actually think it's going to be.
Can you
fun.
see me now?
Yeah, we can see you.
Okay. So now I'm on my laptop computer. So I don't know what the heck that was going on. So let me get back over to here. There you go. So
we're frozen. Now we're not frozen. They said we were both frozen, but I guess.
Yeah, we were definitely both frozen.
Right.
So,
Oh, thank you, right, love. Um, so when we, from your own knowings and study, John,
mhm.
did Jesus have a spiritual practice? He
uh,
was big on prayer, right? He was big on prayer. He was big on mindfulness, clearly,
yeah.
and teaching. But how did the ideas come to him? It seems to me like there must have been some kind of practice of silence or meditation or something. But what do you know about that?
Be still and know that I am God, right? You come
Mm-hmm.
back, and if you think about that from the perspective of what is I am as a present moment declaration, it's owning it, right? It's also, according to Moses, the name of God. So it's you and God as one. So he would go and be still and shut off the chatter of the world. And then he would have this communion with this, with his greater self. You know, in Christianity, they lean into the Trinity in a big way. Now, the Trinity, the Trinitarian idea doesn't even come about until 300 years later. But if you think about the Trinitarian idea as, the Father, Son, the Holy Spirit, right?
Mm-hmm.
The Father being the God consciousness, the Son being the physical world consciousness, which feels so separate and alone. And then you have the Holy Spirit consciousness, which is the higher self consciousness.
Right.
It's who we are fully, with all of our awareness. And when you are still, what you're doing is you're shutting off your fears and your anxieties and your stresses, and you're coming back to that space of that I amness, which is that higher self or that Holy Spirit self, where all information can flow. So you have that. What he would do is he would go and get away from people. You always see in the Bible 40 days, 40 nights in the desert. There's this story of him 40 days battling the devil in the wilderness. Well, when you look at the word devil, Satanos, which is a Greek word, was originated from the word Satan, and Satan comes from the word temptation or accuser. So it wasn't this person or this being that was opposite. It was temptation, the accuser. So in the physical world, we have massive temptation. At the time when he was walking, people kept trying to say him, "Look, you've got a big following. Why don't you become a king and rule?" And so he was battling his own temptation. So he would go out into the wilderness or get away from everybody and just get quiet and ask, you know, whatever you ask in God's name is granted if you have faith, right? So he would go out and he would just ask. It's like when I do private sessions, an hour before I do one, I sit down, I exhale, and I just ask for the person, and I just start writing. And what that point is that we all have that ability, you know, but it comes down to getting very present and very fearless. And that's the mindfulness and the oneness that he had, that he
Mm-hmm.
would practice. He would make sure he did that for himself a lot, actually.
Right. Um, when we think of God, now we think of it. I guess in Christian uh, in sort of mainstream kind of religions, they still think of him as like a father.
Right.
We it seems like we're getting to where we're thinking of God differently now.
Yeah.
Source, um, more of an energy.
Yeah.
Um, and it's in modern times and in spirituality, new whatever you want to call what we're doing is kind of a loose spirituality. It's becoming different, um, and more through NDEs. We're not personifying God
Mm-mm.
as much.
Mm-mm.
Can you explain why Jesus spoke about God as a father and kind of
Sure.
personified him?
So once again, I want to reiterate that nothing in the Bible is a direct quote from Joshua himself.
Okay. Hmm.
It's all hearsay, right?
Okay.
But it's hearsay with an agenda, and specifically a Judaic agenda. Now, if you look at the Old Testament and the Torah, God was a vengeful and jealous God and a male figure, a patriarchal figure.
Uh-huh.
Once again, Taliban, men rule over women, right? And so it's kind of that kind of same feeling. But what I find interesting is when you look at the Abrahamic religions, which are fascinating, starting with Judaism. Judaism, the vengeful, jealous God, the male, the father, Abba, right? And then you get into the New Testament, and it's God is love, and he's still using the Judaic terms, right? Then you get into Islam, and they call God Allah, and one of the reasons they call God Allah is because it's genderless, because it has no male or female association. It is just God, period.
Right.
Which is beautiful, right? Then there's actually one more Abrahamic religion that most people don't realize is an Abrahamic religion, is the Baha'i faith, because they believe, the Muslims believe that Moses and Jesus were the prophets before Muhammad, and the Baha'i faith believe the Baha'u'llah was the prophet after Muhammad, and so they all stem from the Abrahamic line. And when you look at you step back and you look at it from 30,000 feet, you start with fear and anxiety and judgment. And by the time you get to Baha'i, it's this beautiful, loving religion. Mm. And so you're seeing this transition over time from fear to love, and within the Abrahamic religions. And right. I think what we find is, there's a story of Adam and Eve in the Bible. They say, everyone always forgets what happened there. They ate from the tree of knowledge. They got kicked out of paradise. And when you think about it from that perspective, paradise is a subjective feeling. And getting out of spirituality and into a little bit of science, what did Tesla say? If you want to understand the universe, you have to understand frequency, vibration, and energy, right? Mm-hmm. And so what's happening now is we're bridging the gap into the reality of it. When you look at the wall beside you in whatever room you're in, that wall is made of atoms, energy and motion, right? And we know it's energy and motion. Einstein said it's energy and motion. Right. And the air between you and that wall is also made of atoms.
Right.
And your eyes are made of atoms. All we are is our consciousness, and this experience around us is just an illusion of belief, right? Right. Now, if we go back to the book of John, which, by the way, is the best darn book in the Bible.
Of course it is.
even though he didn't write it. The first lines, in the beginning is the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Your words, your thoughts, your beliefs go out to this energy, and this energy shows those beliefs to you, around you, in His image, right? Buddha said, what you think you become, you create your world. Krishna said, you're the culmination of your thought. The Bible says, as a man thinketh, so is he. So they're all saying the same thing, and this energy is now being defined as God, right? I love Einstein's approach to God. They asked him, did he believe in God? He says, I believe in the God of Spinoza, which means a greater consciousness as opposed to some guy in a cloud with a gray beard like mine.
Well, so John, have I ever told you my own Jesus experience?
Oh no, please share.
Okay. So let me tell you this. And people, if people have heard this story before, I apologize. I've only told it maybe 2 or 3 times, and once was at a retreat that I taught at. So, back in about 2015, I guess. I had left my preschool position. I couldn't do it anymore because my back was killing me, and it was a lot. So I'd been doing it for over a decade, so I was tired. I left my preschool position, and I was still subbing, but I left that, and then at the same time, Cassie had gone to college and gone to film school, and she had a boyfriend that she was flying back and forth to San Diego to see. And at the same time, I was taking care of an aunt who was in hospice, and she passed away, and it was a very hard passing. It wasn't. I had dealt with hospice before with my dad, and it was a beautiful, peaceful passing. This was not a beautiful, peaceful passing. It was very difficult, and I was kind of falling apart. I felt like I had lost my identity as a preschool teacher. I had lost my friends there because I didn't see them anymore, and that was my social life too, And then Cassie was flying the nest, and and then I've got this kind of hospice experience that was devastating. It was just devastating. So I decided I'm gonna go to a silent retreat, and it was the first time I had done it, and I was really, really doing a lot of spiritual work. I had read Eckhart Tolle. I was practicing mindfulness and meditation and all these things, but I couldn't break through. I just felt like I was just in pieces, and I decided I'm going to go to this silent retreat, and I got there and I put away all my stuff, and of course you don't have your phone or anything like that. And I just thought, I'm not going to survive this. So why did I do this? Because it was just so intensely quiet. And you're alone with your own thoughts, and you're and a lot had been happening. So I thought, how am I going to do this? And I thought, well, you know what? I'm here for a few days. We're going to have all these meditations that I'm going to be taking part in. I'm going to try to get a message from Jesus, because that is the only person right now who I think could help me. And I need help. So we would have meditations in the morning, meditations at night. And that would make that my intention. I want a message from Jesus. I need a message from Jesus. So I would just, sit in my meditation, and I was asking, and I thought, and every day I thought, well, I guess I'm not going to get one. I guess he's not talking to me. And then on the last day, I decided I'm going to take some time in the hot tub, because you could secure a half hour by yourself in the hot tub. So I'm like, I'll just do it. So I was in the hot tub, and I maybe had about 10 minutes left. And all of a sudden I heard, in a soft, low voice, "Fear not, for you are whole." WHOLE, whole. And in that moment, I felt, I completely understood because I couldn't even really name what was going on with me. I just felt broken. And in that moment, I realized that all of these things were happening, and I felt like pieces were being taken from me.
Right.
And when he said that, it reminded me that there is nothing that can diminish your spirit. I just knew that it was almost like a download. Now I know it to be kind of a download, because it was words, but it was also understanding. It's like he infused me with the words, but also the understanding of the words, exactly what he meant. And I was kind of buzzing the whole day. I felt that vibration. And since that time, that's why I talk about it in my bio, because that was a breakthrough experience. After that, all of my abilities were just bright. It's like they were just brighter. I always had abilities, but they were kind of dulled and kind of up and down and kind of, but after that, it was like, boom, the lights went on.
Right.
So that is my theory. And does that track for what you know?
Oh my gosh, does it track? Because the teachings of Jeshua are very much about releasing fear. And the first thing he said was, "Fear not, you are whole. Yeah. You are complete." And the Sufis say that God is on one side of a veil and we're on the other side of the veil. And our life is the struggle against the veil, and the veil is our fear. And Buddha said the secret to enlightenment is the eradication of fear. The idea that we're not whole, in your experience, what you just said, you just listed a whole bunch of reasons why you were losing love.
Right.
Even your career, that you've identified yourself as this. Who am I now?
Exactly.
And all of these, am I going to be loved for something different? Because I was receiving love from that career. And so we have these relationships with love and fear. And what you were told was, fear not, you are whole. And you chose to step into your wholeness. What is wholeness? Oneness. You stepped into the absolute oneness, which opens up all your gifts. When I do private sessions, I get clairvoyance, clairaudience, clairsentience, sometimes mediumship. And I never know what's going to happen. It just happens as I write them. But it's that coming back to that state of fearlessness and being present. Every big transcendental spiritual experience has two things in common. It's completely present and completely fearless. And in that hot tub, you are completely present and you are completely fearless. And then, of course, when you're completely fearless, you're in the state of pure love, and that's where people like Jeshua, Buddha, Krishna all reside. They're in that oneness. And so, absolutely, and you focus your intention. I want to hear from him.
Yeah.
So, of course, that was the message you got. It was from him.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah, I'll never forget it. And again, it was a breakthrough because everything changed after that. Everything was different, and my focus in my life was different. It was just different. Everything was different after that.
Right.
So when it comes to the healing the sick, miracles, turning water into wine, how much were real miracles, and how much was about shifting perspective or teaching people how to shift perspective, and also self-healing, teaching people to heal themselves?
Yeah. I did a video on this on my other channel, the Recovering Catholic channel that I have. It's called Jeshua's Healing Method. And, in the Bible, he says it's your faith that heals you, right? His whole thing was he would bring people to faith. Over the course of time, people would come to their faith, they would heal themselves. Mm-hmm. And then because he was the one who helped them do that, they started to attribute it to him being a healer. So people just started believing he was healing. And so that kind of made his legend kind of grow. Right. I'll tell you a story using his teachings, and I attribute everything I do from that past life regression and from my time working with what I know. And by the way, I consider it all to be very simple. Even Esther Hicks says, ask and it is given, and so it literally is that simple. It's you declare it into your experience. I was in Canada doing a session with I spoke at a Unity Church on Sunday, and then on Saturday, and then on Sunday, they had booked me in a building nearby, which is a former convent, and this all day long, people were coming in for private sessions with me, and halfway through the day, somebody walks in a side door, and she's got swelling the size of a grapefruit on the side of her face, and her lips are swollen, and her teeth are pushing between her lips because of the infection in her jaw. And you could just see the pain on her face. And I asked her, I said, what do you believe? What's your faith? And she said, I'm a Christian. Well, now, I know I can talk a good Christian game because I went to 12 years of CCD, thank you very much. Right? So I said to her, okay, so the Bible says, whatever you ask in God's name is granted. Do you believe that? She said, yes. I said, so why don't we just ask? She said, we can do that? I said, yeah, we can just ask. I said, she said, how do we do that? I said, how about something like, thank you, God, for the perfect teeth I am receiving. And she said, oh, okay. So we sat there and we held hands. Thank you, God, for that. And she got more and more animated. And then she came to the end of the last time, and I said, when you thank for something, that's because you believe you're receiving it, right? I said, can I have a glass of water? You say thank you when the water's coming, right? So you believe it's happening. She says, yeah. I said, so you just thanked God for perfect teeth. That's awesome. So you must know it's coming. She said, yeah. I said, then you said, I am receiving. According to Moses, God's name is I am. The Bible says whatever you ask in God's name is granted. So you asked in God's name to receive, and receiving is a present moment action. Do you believe that? She said, yeah. I said, and then you said amen. Do you know what amen means? She said, no. I said, it means right here, right now, it's done. It means so be it. So you just asked for perfect teeth in God's name, and then you said it's done right here. What does that mean? She says, I'm healed. Her swelling was gone. Gone. Now, back up. Had she walked in the room and said she was Buddhist, I would have said, Buddha says, what you think you become. You create your world. Do you believe that? And I had to go down the Buddhist route.
Yeah.
If she was Hindu, I'd have gone the Hindu route. If she was atheist, I'd have gone an atheist route. It only matters the belief that it's outcome. That's why placebos work.
Right.
That's why placebos, because people put belief in it. But the thing is, all the power is yours. You do create your world. Or as my buddy Shakespeare back there would say, there is nothing good nor bad, but thinking makes it so.
Right.
So it comes back to us choosing to believe and here's the other thing. Most people are creating from their subconscious beliefs, which are behind them, right? But the creation is in front of you. You declare and it comes into your experience. You declare and it comes into your experience. So it's like that Southern one. I declare, right? You declare, and it comes into your moment. So it's a matter of realizing that it's not about necessarily asking, as opposed to declaring. I am God's name, blank, healed.
Right.
And think about it like also in the idea of motion. So in the Bible, first miracle is the water and the wine, right? Mom comes and says, "Hey Jay, they're out of wine." He says, "Come on, Mom, it's not time yet." And then he turns around, he says, "Put water in those jugs, place the jugs over there where they're going to collect wine," and there was wine. He understood, he believed wholeheartedly wine was coming to his experience. He just started doing all the things in alignment with wine being served with that belief. And so wine would then be served. So it comes down to every one of us has the power, because that's what he taught. Greater works than I have done you will do. So it's a matter of us coming back to this idea of I am declaring. Now I'll give you guys one of the greatest gifts I gave myself years ago. I gave myself permission to enjoy how things come into my life after the fact.
Mm.
So I would say, "Thank you for this, blankety blank," and I'd just let it go. And it would come into my life, and it would come into the most weird ways. And I'd go, "That's cool how that happened. That's fun." Just enjoy it, and, right? I literally treat my world like it's Amazon.com. I just put my order in. I don't care how it shows up. It just shows up. That's what Yeshua taught, was this idea that you all have that ability. Your world is truly created by your belief. And when I bet everybody in this group here knows a negative person. And if you don't know a negative person, you might be a negative person. but that negative person believes the world is negative, so they always see a negative world.
Yeah.
Because that's what their experience will be. I tend to think of myself as living a joyful life and happy life, and I giggle and laugh. You watch any one of my videos, I guarantee you every one of my videos has a laugh in it somewhere.
Right. Yeah, I totally agree with that. So much of this is perspective, right?
Yeah.
Your perspective is so it does create your reality. It's so powerful. I talked about if you broke your leg and you were in the house for the summer, you could either look at it as, I'm stuck in here, I can't walk, I can't do anything, my house is my prison, why am I doing? Or you could have the perspective of, aren't I lucky that I have a house to recuperate in, that I can recuperate in comfort, and this space is going to be my a sacred space. It's going to be my sanctuary, right?
Yeah.
The same thing, two different perspectives, and so perspective it's powerful.
Yeah. And a lot of people think struggle equals growth. And that's a belief too, right? And they'll tell you the story of the butterfly coming out of the cocoon. The wings don't get strong without the struggle against the cocoon. And I always ask the question, I said, "How do you know the bug was struggling?" They go, "What do you mean?" I said, "Well, because all you know, that bug was in that cocoon. He looked up, saw something hanging off the wall. Oh, let's pick that off the wall. Oh, that was fun, picking stuff off the wall." Started picking stuff off the wall. Start getting halfway through. I start seeing light on the other side. Well, wonder what that is. Let's go see what that is. Comes out and he flies, right?
Yeah.
You don't know if that bug was struggling. It's like the two guys going into the gym on leg day. One guy walks in, he says, "God, I hate leg day. It's the worst day of the world. My legs always hurt. Weights are so heavy. It's a hard time doing the squats." And he goes over and he cusses the whole time, and he does all the sets and reps, and he walks out of the gym and says, "Oh, my legs hurt. This sucks. How am I going to get home?" Next guy walks into the gym, says, "It's leg day. I love leg day. It's the day my legs grow the most." And he goes over to the thing, and he lifts up all the weights, and he does all the same sets, all the same reps, all the same stuff. Walks out of the gym saying, "Man, this is great. My legs are growing so much." They lifted the same weights. They did the same things. They just had a different chosen perspective.
Yeah, different attitude. Sorry about the cat here.
I
try to get him to move, but he's just.
I like how it froze that way. It's beautiful.
A stray who's adopted us. Yeah. So rounding out kind of the life of Christ, of Jesus, John, the death and the resurrection. Again, what is myth? What is true? why do people focus on that aspect? Why do people focus on the death? Um, I I don't tend
Okay.
to focus on the death. I,
Yeah,
I tend to focus on his
I
life
don't
and the
focus on the
resurrection.
death, but I have to tell you, I have a distinct regressive memory of seeing him after the crucifixion, alive and without any injuries. And the memory starts with me on my face in the sand, and I look up and I see his feet. I look up and he's just laughing at me over top of me because I was like, oh my God, I thought you were dead, right? It's an interesting thing. Did he resurrect? Did he die? You know, I tend to think that, and I don't have any validation for this. This is just my own interpretation. I've done a lot of studies in India, and you know, the East, and there are story after story of gurus who come to the edge of a river that's raging and they can't cross it, and they literally say that they sit down, they project their consciousness to the other side, they manifest their body around it, and they keep on going. And so they're literally resurrecting their body on the other side of the river. And I think that Joshua understood that the world was an illusion of belief. And I think that he absolutely could have done that and could have learned that in India.
Right, right.
I don't have a direct memory of him being in India because John was never with him in India. But I totally believe that it's a possibility with you know, a big enough faith. Why do we focus on the death? Well, it's a great thing to tell you that you are a sinner. You caused that. He died for our sins. It's a great thing to keep people in a faith. You know, you have to be here to absolve yourself of that horrible sin. And I saw somebody in here earlier, and I think it was Shishi, and I'd like to address, if you don't mind, Kim, I'd like to address something she asked.
Yeah.
She said, please tell me there isn't a hell, because, you know, and I've addressed this a lot. In Judaic practice, when people died, they go to Sheol. Sheol is not hell. It's just the place they go. In the Christian practice, the original text was the word Gehenna or Hades, Hades being the Greek version, Gehenna being the other version. During the time of the writing of the Bible, or the text that became the Bible later, there was an area outside of Jerusalem named Gehenna, the Valley of Gehenna, and a Judaic warlord killed a bunch of children in that valley. And later on, it said that they began burning their trash in that same valley. So you had a bunch of children going and dying there, and you had burning fires there. And so, you know, you're going to go burn in Gehenna became sort of the thing. But the idea of this hell and damnation and devil and 9 levels of hell doesn't come into play until the 1300s when Dante wrote his Inferno, and the medieval and Renaissance scholars decided that was the model for hell.
Right.
And so there is no hell, and there's no hell in the original text anywhere. That's the later edition. I just wanted to say that for her because she looked
That's,
like
I
she
think
knew
that's
you.
great. I think that's, I always, my church talks about hell, the devil, things like that. And it never resonated with me at all.
Yeah, yeah.
Not at all. Um, so I did this one, kind of to end this. I, for our club, I was guided I usually do a spirit guided message at the beginning of the month, with a practice. And I was guided to go on live and talk about the quote about the lilies of the field.
Mm.
When he talks about how they grow, they toil not, neither do they spin. That's one of my favorite quotes.
Yeah,
And so I went
yeah.
on to talk about that, and we talked for a solid hour about all of the lessons, which is in that little
Yeah.
part, you know, what we can learn from the lilies of the field. It was such a fun conversation, but I wonder, that's one of my favorite teachings, but it's so simple. What are your favorite? Do you have a favorite teaching that you go
I
back
always
to
come
that you
back
love?
to the simplest of simple. God is love. and the Father and I are one. Joshua says in the Bible, the Father and I are one, and you must become one with me as I am with the Father. In other words, all of us coming together as one. And when I look at it from that perspective, that's easy. That's a simple choice. We don't toil unless we choose to toil. Nothing can harm us without us giving it permission to harm us. We have the ability to not look at the world as a negative perspective and live into a positive one. But the big secret is that the world is predominantly positive anyway. And it doesn't look like it because the bad stuff gets all the good press.
Right,
But,
exactly.
if I drive if I had a job up in Cleveland and I drove 30 minutes north every day on a 9-to-5 job, I'd probably pass 1,000 cars every day on the way to and from work. And every day I might see one accident off to the side of the road. The news is going to focus on that one accident.
Right.
They're not
Right.
going to focus on the 999 cars that made it safely to their destination with no problem whatsoever.
Right.
So it's a matter of us realizing that the world is predominantly positive. Going back to Einstein, the imagination is the preview of life's coming attractions. What we can imagine and create. We are
That's
creating an
right.
experience,
Yeah.
and we have that ability. And right now, the world seems crazy because we got crazy things going on with crazy people. But remember the Socrates quote: "When the debate is lost, slander becomes the tool of the loser."
Mhm.
They're getting loud and calling names because they're losing.
That's exactly right, John.
Yeah.
We did a thing on Thursday night, and if Biden had stayed in, he would have won. And whoever takes his place is going to win.
Yep.
It's not the people, it's the ideas, it's the
Right.
stuff they're pushing, it's the
Right.
things they want to do. Nobody wants it. Nobody likes it.
Yeah. So I know you've done predictions on this before, and I'd like to can I just throw some in?
Sure.
I'll show you a couple things. Okay. In 2016, I had a clairvoyant vision of a guy with a really bad hairstyle and orange skin
Oh no.
being taken out of a police car in leg and arm shackles wearing an orange jumpsuit being walked into a building. And I saw that like a video on my head. And that was in 2016. You know what else happened in 2016? I saw Kamala Harris as president. And I
I
voted
love
for her in
it.
the primary in 2016.
I
So
love it. And
now let
I'm just,
me add
yeah,
one
go
more
ahead,
thing.
go ahead.
Let me add one more thing.
Yeah.
I come from Delaware. I have known Joe Biden since I was a little kid. He is known in Delaware as Foot and Mouth Joe. He's a guy, we know he's a good guy, we know he's a caring guy, we know he's a loving guy, but sometimes he says the dumbest stuff. Right? But when you see him now, he's not the man that I knew.
Right.
He is diminished right now. And I think it's one of the greatest things he could do is to step aside and let Kamala. And think about this. One side has literally come out and said, we're going to take women's rights away. We're going to do all these horrible things to women. Now what's happening? You have a candidate who could be the first female president, and she's African American and Indian, so she's both, right? And on top of it, she has a chance. She's young, so now she's the young candidate, the first female president possibility. She's got so much more going for her than the old guy who's got 91 indictments. Right?
I mean, he's such a weak candidate. I mean,
Yeah.
honestly, it's like it's all of that confidence they have that just they it freaks people out. It makes them think, well, can they win? No, they're not going to win. But in 2000 we're sharing predictions. So in 2000 I think it was about 2019. I think it was right before they started the primaries. Or the not the convention, the primaries. I saw a young woman and young man making these sweeping changes across the U.S. And they showed it to me it was like Mickey Mouse and Fantasia, where he's just like doing the wand. That's what it was like. And when Joe Biden picked Kamala Harris as his VP, I thought, I wonder if it was her. And
Right.
now that we're in the state we're in, I'm like, it was her. It was her,
Yeah.
and she's going to pick a young man for her VP, and they're going to change everything.
Yeah. For
Um,
me, I would love personally. I would love to see a Harris and Booker ticket myself.
oh, that would be fantastic. Oh my gosh, I didn't think about Cory Booker.
Oh, could you
That would be
imagine?
fantastic.
Fantastic! I would love to see that. I would love to see
I
that.
would love to see. I also thought, John, I also thought this morning that I was thinking a lot about this. And I love Joe Biden. And if he, like I said, if he'd have stayed in, he would have won. It's okay. Either way, it would have been okay. But when uh, when it comes to the story of what we've been through over the past 8 years, I thought, of course, it has to be a woman that beats him. Of course, it does.
Yep. And one of color.
And one of color. Of course,
Yeah.
it has to be that. It has to be that. Yeah, yeah.
I completely agree. And I honestly, the idea of having the first female president, which is just lovely, the old men have had a long time to deal with it, and I think that it's time for someone like that. Like I said, I voted for her in the primary in 2016 because I thought she was the smartest person on the stage, and I think that she's gotten the bum rap during the past 4 years because the work she does isn't seen. But I think she's behind the scenes. I'm almost willing to bet she was Joe Biden's pit bull, going out there and going in and taking care of things and getting things. She was a former prosecutor.
Yes.
She's going to go in and she's going to kick butt. And I think she's going to be great. And I don't think I don't think there's any way that the mango guy will make it back to the White House ever. I don't think so.
I've never seen that. I've never seen that. And like I said, I think that he would have won anyway, but I think he was getting a lot of pressure, money pressure, that kind of thing. And I think he worried about the House and Senate. I think he's a patriot. I think he's an unselfish patriot. He's the complete opposite of Trump in every way. And this is one of those ways. And I think he really this was a few weeks ago, I had said that, if he really thinks that he's going to hurt the Democrats, he will sit down. He's that kind of person. I think he thought he would hurt the.
And I like how over here in the chat, some people are saying Pete Buttigieg. I think he'd be fantastic.
We are right with. We've got so many. Somebody else said Beto O'Rourke. I'm like, we have talent galore. We really do.
What we don't have is the audacity to tout our successes.
Yes.
We don't. You know what I mean? We don't talk about our successes enough. And Joe Biden and Barack Obama, those were the most successful presidencies.
Yes.
Statistically.
Yes. And the favorites and the top of the list and absolutely.
And the least on the bottom, what is it? The worst president in history is Trump is the last on the bottom of that list. He's the top of that list. He is the worst president in history.
Trump and Hoover.
According to Bible scholars.
Yeah. Trump and Hoover, those two are the worst. Nixon, I guess he's the worst too.
Yeah.
But well, thank you so much, John. This has been so much fun. I really appreciate this because, like I said, I've been wanting to do a show just kind of dedicated to the story and teachings of Jesus, and I'm really happy you could do this.
I'm so glad. I'm so glad I was able to come on and just share. And let me also say, anybody I don't expect anyone to believe my story ever. I think spirituality truly is a personal journey. If it rings true for you, then great. If it doesn't, then great. The only thing that matters to me, and the only thing that Jeshua would have cared about, is that you're a loving person. Yeah. He ended his story with, "I leave you one commandment: love one another." Let's just do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, John. Thank you so much. And thank you, everybody, for coming in and hanging out. And I hope that everybody has a great Sunday. We're going to do our 2-minute healing, 2-minute 50-state healing in just a few minutes. And I'll be over there and I will see you there. We're doing Oklahoma today. We're going to be talking about Oklahoma.
Where the wind goes sweeping down the plane.
Exactly. I was hearing, yeah, exactly. All
I
right.
always
Thanks,
hear Hugh
everybody.
Jackman sing that song.
Yes. All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a good
All
one.
right.
Bye-bye.
See you guys. Thank you.